Which team out of all those teams looks to be the biggest winner so far, bringing in a trade piece?
Well, the biggest winner so far is the Atlanta Braves, but long term it's going to be the New York Yankees.
Fly ball onto the track, at the wall, it's gone! Home run!
Turns on a ball, deep right field, and gone!
What a game, what a moment.
All right, I am pumped to bring back on the show, as I do every single week, the Hall of Famer, John Smoltz. John, how are we doing this week?
Doing great. Traveling on a family vacation week, so doing it on the road.
Love that. Love that. Well, let's start with the fact that we're about a third of the way into the season right now, which is wild. And I want to ask you, out of all the biggest trades that we saw in the offseason, so Chris Sale, Corbin Burns, Tyler Glasnow, Juan Soto, Dylan Cease, which team out of all those teams looks to be the biggest winner so far, bringing in a trade piece?
Well, the biggest winner so far is the Atlanta Braves, but long term it's going to be the New York Yankees. If Chris Sale can continue and stay healthy, then it's hands down. With the injury to Spencer Strider, I think what he's doing is keeping him afloat. But long term, Soto in that offense in New York is second to none right now, with the ability to keep that lineup going long. So everybody's made those mentioned trades, everyone's benefiting big time. But I think long term, it's just hard for a position player to not have an impact bigger than some of the pitchers that are having fantastic starts to the season.
Let's go real long term then. Do you think Juan Soto ends up staying with the Yankees for the foreseeable future?
I would think it is a heavy favorite for them to get him in a Yankees uniform. He will be beloved. He already is. I know what he wants to command. I don't know how many other teams can do that, but then again, we never thought we'd see a $700 million contract either. So who knows? But I think that the Yankees, if they go on to get to the World Series and possibly win it, it would be hard pressed to not want to bring him back in either fashion. But he's such a dynamic player, and that stadium, he could shatter records in that stadium.
We've already seen, he's repped by Scott Boras. We've already heard Soto say his door is always open, and it seems he's willing to talk during the season. It does just feel right now like the perfect fit. But when it comes to Boras, he's always done things a certain way. So it just feels like it might take until the offseason to make anything happen.
I agree, but there needs to be some learning curve here on some of the things that have happened in the last year. So
yep.
If the player has control, then maybe the learning curve will happen. If the player doesn't have control and lets the agent just do what he's got to do, then you might see the same trend.
Yeah. Again, we're about a third of the way through the season, so it's early, but finally we're starting to see some resemblance of division races and wild card races taking shape. Of all of that, of all the teams that seem to be maybe surprises that are competing for a spot this year, or teams that are supposed to be really good that are pretty much playing the way they should, what team do you think needs to go out and make a trade and start thinking about bolstering their roster if they want to be serious contenders this year?
Well, it is a little early for that, but if it's going to be the team, it's got to be the Atlanta Braves. I think they are going to have a lot of depth, but I don't know that the impact is going to be in their rotation what they lost in Spencer Strider. So I think that would be the team that look to get a starter. And as you can see, my dog wants to get in the podcast.
So do you think the Braves, are you saying that, do you think it needs to be a starter with the loss of Spencer Strider? Do you think they're going to need to make a move for the playoffs?
I think so. I think what they've learned in the past, look, I mean, they had the offense last year. They were missing the arms and the depth. It's not a disrespect to what they have currently in their rotation. But again, if you think that Chris Sale is going to sustain this entire way, they've got some guys they've got to be careful with. Charlie Morton, Chris Sale, they're not exactly going to throw 220 innings. Max Fried is a lockdown. He's a lockdown number one, but they're still going to need to add, in my opinion, which every team's going to need to add when it gets to that point. But I think they're set up well if they do that.
John, I was out at Dodger Stadium this past weekend, and so the Reds were in town, and Elly De La Cruz was there, and the two MVP frontrunners right now, I would say, were on that field: Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani. But watching him and that game, I believe it was Thursday night, steal 4 bases, and the pace that he's on. My question for you is, if Elly De La Cruz steals 100 bases this year and hits, the current projection that he's on for homers, let's say hits somewhere between 25 and 30 homers and steals 100 bases, is there a world in which a guy like that playing shortstop doesn't win the MVP award?
There is. Now, again, stealing 100 bases in today's era, I mean, it's still impressive. The rules are conducive for it, and I hope we get a chance to see somebody do that. But he's going to have to cut down his strikeouts to do that. And I think he's a dynamic player. If he single-handedly puts the Reds in the playoff picture, then I think you're right. But there are some pretty other incredible players that primarily play for the Los Angeles Dodgers that are going to give him and maybe they split some votes and it does go to somebody else. But 100 bases, I think would be incredible given the era that we're in. But it also is a little bit different when you think about Vince Coleman and some of the guys getting 100 in that era when there weren't the rules and the bases and the enticement that exists today.
What are your thoughts on a DH winning the MVP award, specifically Shohei? Because it is a little different this year. I know he's DHing, but everyone in the world knows he's DHing because he's injured and can't pitch. He's the biggest star in the sport. Do you think it would be possible for a designated hitter like Shohei Ohtani to win the MVP award?
I think it's possible. He'd have to be even better than he's ever been because of the two-way Shohei Ohtani. So I think it's possible, and he's on his way to doing that. But it's definitely going to be different for him this year, not pitching.
John, I appreciate you and your dog for joining us as you do every single week. Your dog can be a weekly guest as well if you want.
He's a stud. We'll look to get him in another episode or not.
John, enjoy the family vacation, my friend. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, just wanted to thank John Smoltz again for joining me as he does every single week here for Saturday with Smoltz. Always a lot of fun catching up with the Hall of Famer and being able to pick his ear. Specifically this week, I thought the MVP conversation was interesting. Yes, Elly might steal 100 bases, but the rules are different. The rules are a little more conducive to that. And then I think the battle between Mookie and Shohei is going to be, honestly, really cool to watch as the season progresses, because you got one guy playing shortstop, one guy just DHing, but putting up all-time numbers. So I do think that'll be very interesting. The division races and the trades and all that stuff will be fun to talk about as we get closer and closer. But I had to ask a little preliminary question. And I agree with the Braves. I don't think, with the loss of Spencer Strider, I think in the playoffs they're going to be missing an arm and wishing they had one more. So we'll see what they do. But thanks again to John Smoltz for joining, as he does every single week. And thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. You can also watch everything we do. Spotify, you can watch on our YouTube channel, Flippin Bats Pod there. And follow us on TikTok. We are getting closer and closer to 100,000 followers. And we put some really cool stuff out there. So appreciate you all. And remember, have a great weekend. Until Monday, my friends, find your bat and flip it. Peace.